Hi, my name is Danielle Del Torre, and this is my final project for my Law of Mass Communications class. The topic of my project is privacy cases, specifically voyeurism cases. First, we're going to define this term. Voyeurism is defined as watching someone at a place and time when that person has a reasonable expectation of privacy. This means a place and time when a reasonable person could believe that he or she could fully disrobe in privacy without being concerned that their undressing was being viewed, recorded, or broadcasted by another in the places of an interior of a residential dwelling, bathroom, changing room, fitting room, or tanning booth. Video voyeurism is defined as filming someone for his or her own amusement, entertainment, sexual arousal, gratification, or profit, or for the purpose of degrading or abusing another person. Video voyeurism is also when someone purposely uses or installs an imaging device to secretly view, broadcast, or record a person without that person's knowledge and consent who is dressing, undressing, or privately exposing the body at a place and time when that person has a reasonable expectation of privacy. The first case we'll be looking at today happened in 2016 in the state of Indiana. On February 1st, a 30-year-old Joseph Biondi was caught looking into the window of a 17-year-old girl she was changing. After his arrest, the state of Indiana charged Biondi with a level 6 felony voyeurism. The state also intended to seek an enhanced punishment due to Biondi having previous voyeurism charges. Police officer Brandon Messeroche testified that on the day of the incident, officers collected a DNA sample of seminal fluid outside the victim's bedroom. It was then determined that the DNA sample matched a previous sample of Biondi's. After obtaining an arrest and search warrant, Officer Messeroche arrested, interviewed, and collected a new DNA sample from Biondi. Biondi claimed he had no idea how seminal fluid got on the wall outside the victim's window. Following his arrest, Biondi entered into a plea deal. He was tried and convicted of level 6 voyeurism and was given a 2-year prison term. The next case is actually two cases involving the same defendant. In the court documents I found, he's only identified by his presumed last name, Parkerson. In the first case, the Broward County resident was seen watching a husband and wife from the back patio of their home. When the defendant was caught moments later, he had with him a camera which he tried to smash against the ground. The state charged him with burglary of a dwelling with intent to commit video voyeurism and tampering with evidence. In the second case involving Parkerson, a woman was in her bathroom getting ready to shower when she turned around and saw the defendant on her back patio watching her. After the police arrested the defendant a few days later, the state charged him with voyeurism and burglaring of an occupied dwelling with intent to commit video voyeurism. In both cases, the defendant pled no contest to the charges without reserving his right to appeal. On both cases' burglary charges, the court sentenced the defendant to 8 years in prison, followed by 2 years of community control and 5 years of probation, all to run concurrently. On the tampering with evidence charge in the first case, the court sentenced the defendant to 5 years in prison to run concurrently with the 8-year sentence. On the voyeurism charge in the second case, the court sentenced the defendant to time served. The court pronounced the defendant to be subject to the following numerous special conditions: GPS monitoring, a psychosexual evaluation, counseling and a sex offender program at a minimum of once per week, psychiatric visits at least once per month, provisions of copies of all medications and prescriptions to his probation officer, compliance with all medications and prescriptions, random urine testing, polygraph examinations 4 times a year, no victim contact, remaining at least 500 feet away from the victims and their homes, and payment of all mandatory court costs except supervision costs. The court noted that it was not designating the defendant as a sex offender. In the next case, a woman was shopping in a store when she observed a man crouching down with what she believed was a cell phone in his hand. She saw that the screen of the cell phone was illuminated. She then observed the man with his arm extended, holding the cell phone under her skirt. The victim confronted him, and the man told her that he had dropped his cell phone. While yelling for assistance, the victim attempted to detain the man. He was able to free himself and flee the store before assistance arrived. Store surveillance video confirmed that the man crouched down with an illuminating device in his hand, moving it towards the victim's skirt. It also showed the man exit the store and get into a vehicle in the parking lot. Using the vehicle's license plate number, law enforcement identified Stahl as the registered owner of the vehicle and obtained his driver's license photo. Law enforcement positively identified Stahl as the man in the surveillance video. Stahl was arrested, but his cell phone was not found on his person. During an interview with law enforcement, Stahl admitted to being in the store, denied taking inappropriate images, and verbally consented to a search of his cell phone, which he identified as an Apple iPhone 5 located in his residence. After officers retrieved the cell phone from Stahl's residence, he withdrew his consent to search the phone. A search warrant was issued for the contents of the described Apple iPhone 5. However, the state was unable to execute the warrant and view the contents of the phone because the cell phone is passcoded and refused to give law enforcement the passcode. As a result, the state filed a motion to compel production of the passcode. Despite the motion being denied, Stahl was charged with the third-degree felony of video voyeurism by intentionally using an imaging device to secretly view, broadcast, or record under or through the clothing being worn by another person. Due to lack of evidence, the case was thrown out. The next case we'll be covering is one we're familiar with, the DC Upskirt case. On June 19, 2013, Park Police allegedly observed Mr. Cleveland taking pictures of women on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial. Officers allege that they observed Mr. Cleveland bring his camera to eye level, twist the camera lens, and lower the camera as females walked by. Officers further allege that Mr. Cleveland moved along the Lincoln Memorial steps, turned to face the memorial, and then sat down by the reflecting pool while performing actions consistent with snapping pictures. According to officers, when they approached Mr. Cleveland, he stood up, put his hand in his pocket, and began to leave. At this point, the officers began shouting for Mr. Cleveland to show his hands and drop the camera. The pictures Mr. Cleveland took do not capture hidden parts of the body, but rather portions of the body exposed by the individual's voluntary physical positioning and the fit and fabric of the clothing worn. The images captured were not incidental glimpses and were in fact images that were exposed to the public without requiring any extraordinary lengths or in fact any lengths whatsoever to view. At trial, the judge stated because they were publicly exposed areas and that there was no evidence the defendant positioned his camera to do this on purpose, that they had no case, and Mr. Cleveland was let go. The last case we'll be looking at today is State v. Panic. The defendant, John Panic, was accused of engaging in sexual activity with a woman in his home, and while doing so, making a video recording of the encounter without the woman's knowledge or consent. He was accused of doing the same thing on at least 2 other occasions with 2 other women. The state charged the defendant with violating the general statutes written on your screen at this moment. This section generally prohibits a person from knowingly and with malice video recording another person without the knowledge and consent of such other person, while such other person is not in plain view, and under circumstances where such other person has a reasonable expectation of privacy. The victim went to the defendant's home and demanded that he delete any and all secret recordings of her. Upon this, she discovered that he had also recorded other women, but he claimed that they were consensual. Following this, the defendant was arrested and charged with voyeurism in violation of Section 53A-189A in 3 separate informations, each one relating to one of the 3 women he recorded. The defendant moved to dismiss all charges on the ground that recording his own consensual sexual activity with another person cannot establish the second element of the statute, namely that the recording took place when the victim was not in plain view. The question with the not in plain view element of the video voyeurism statute is whether it must be evaluated from the perspective of the defendant or the public at large. The trial court concluded that the former was a correct test and granted the defendant's motion to dismiss because the alleged victims were in his immediate physical presence. The state appealed, and the appellate court affirmed, agreeing with the trial court. Thank you for viewing my final project, and I hope you enjoyed it.